5 o'clock on Wednesday, the 14th of November. That's what I mean to say. You know, it's funny. I am working very hard on being present, and I was busy doing something and not being present. And so it certainly shows, doesn't it? I wonder how many of us are present in the moment when we're talking to each other, when we're working on a project, when we're making claims to be doing something or not doing something. I wonder how many of us are busy thinking about other things. It shows. It shows when you're together, when you're doing what it is you said you're doing, and that's the only thing you're doing. It shows. It shows with results. It shows with emotion. It shows with an element that is the thing that makes something interesting or not. And there's probably no worse feeling to somebody who is present, to be in a conversation with somebody and realize somewhere in the middle of that conversation that that other person's not present. And they say, or they say, yeah. And you can just see that sort of glaze in their look, in their eye. You can see that they're not paying attention to you. They're not there with you. They're faking it. And it happens all the time. We all do it. We're all guilty of it. But I just wonder if we can't look at that and say, gee, maybe that's why we haven't accomplished what we set out to. Or maybe even more, maybe that's why other people do accomplish things in spite of us, in spite of what we say we want. We say, what do we want? And then we yell out justice, but we don't necessarily think about it when we yell it out. We just yell it out because that's what we do. I wonder if we were to stop and think about what we really want. What does that look like? What do we want? Tax and regulation? What do we want? Higher prices for a plant that anybody can grow? What do we want? Restrictive regulations that say you can't have it because you don't have enough money to go through certain protocols? I don't know. It's what we've said we wanted because that's what we have done. That's what we've accomplished. Every single place that we pass these laws, that's what we've gotten. We've gotten laws that treat this plant like it's an alien virus, like it's so toxic that you must have all these things in place or somebody's going to die. That's what we've gotten. Apparently, that's what we want. I'm here to talk about another alternative. I'm here to talk about maybe at least what I want, what people say that they want. I want a world that liberty is part of the protocol, that's part of the paradigm. Liberty, think about what does liberty means? It means freedom. It means the ability to do things at will, without being told what to do, without being prosecuted for certain actions, without being taxed and fined and prohibited from things. And I want to point things out, and I'm not being negative about any of the steps we've made. We've made a lot of good steps, and I'm pleased about some steps that we've made. But please be very clear when you make a statement that they're not going to do this, they're not going to do that, this is legal, that's not legal. Look into what they really say. Generally speaking, when we pass laws that say we're not going to prosecute cannabis crimes, what they mean is possession. What they mean is cultivation. They don't say they're not going to prosecute possession with the intent to sell. They don't say anything about some of these felony cases, because that's unfortunately the unspoken Trojan horse in this. There's always a place where it ends. And I don't know what the specifics are of some of these new laws that have passed, but I'm willing to bet, because I've always bet and I've always won this bet, that there's a place that says, well, we will prosecute if you do that. Because when they say we're not going to prosecute these crimes anymore, I just wonder, does it mean that What if I had 10,000 plants? Would you prosecute me then? What if I had 10 pounds of oil? Would you prosecute me then? What if I was selling that material? Would you prosecute me then? I'll bet you there's a place where they would. And I just think that maybe we should look into that. And I'm not saying that it's not good. Most people will benefit from a law that will not prosecute most people for most things. But it's almost always possession, and we fall for it because we don't read the fine print. We don't read all the words on the page. Do you know how many people and that I work with, people that care about me, people that love me, people that I work with in business and in activism, and I give them a simple direction. And I send it to them on a piece of paper, and they read 4 words out of 3 paragraphs. And they ask me a question based on the fact that they read 4 words out of 3 paragraphs. And the answer generally is in those other 3 paragraphs. And I have to think that possibly, if we were to decide today that maybe it's important enough to really get down and let's just put this effort in. Let's make a plan. Let's finish it. I think if we stop and think about what we really want, and we decide that we really want this, and we decide that we're willing to work together, regardless of where we are, regardless of the imposition it might be, regardless of the hassle, the other things we got to do, the hardships it is, all the reasons why most people don't get together and work. And if we were to put our egos aside and our hurt feelings aside and all of those things and decide, maybe this is important enough to get it done, perhaps we would. Perhaps we would. I've been studying a lot of history lately. There's an old saying, history repeats itself, and we're doomed to repeat history unless we learn its lessons. So I said, well, okay, that should be easy enough. History is recorded. Why don't we learn from it? So there's a lot of history. We got 100,000 years or so worth of history, and I'm picking certain spots, certain people to study, and I'm learning from them. I'm studying some American history and some histories of wars and history, all different kinds of histories of things that have shaped society. And one of the things that I have learned is that human race is a very bloodthirsty race. We have been bloodthirsty since we've been human beings. We're brutal. We're a brutal race. There's probably a lot less brutality going on today than there ever has been at any point in history. Doesn't seem like it because everything seems brutal to us. But the truth is, if you look back at how people have been treated and how people treated each other over the last thousands of years, there's a lot more peace today than there ever has been, and a lot less war and a lot less death and a lot less destruction. That being said, it's not enough. That being said, there isn't any amount of injustice that's okay with me. One of the things that I've paid attention to and looked at is that exceptional people in the world have done exceptional things. And exceptional things require an exceptional effort, generally speaking. Most people that have accomplished anything in the world have been exceptional at the ability to get it done, to stay the course. Something that we might call grit, something that is just toughing it out, finishing it, getting it done, staying the course, showing up to work every day, caring enough about it to put that effort in. When was the last time you struggled to do something, to accomplish something? When was the last time you pushed and pushed and pushed until you finally powered it through? When was the last time you did that? Because we live a pretty lazy, laid-back, kick-back life. Generally speaking, most people I know, I don't see anybody put that serious effort into very many things. Some people do it in the workout, in an effort to build a body. There comes a point when you start getting into that you live for that pushing through. But outside of that, who puts a real effort in? Soldiers, when they're out there training, they get pushed to their breaking point. Okay? That's a thing that happens. Firefighters, they get pushed to a breaking point. But outside of that, who pushes? Why don't we push? Why don't we work together and push through it, through the tough times? Why don't we push through until we accomplish the thing we set out to? Why is it that we always say, oh, there's these reasons why, and all the complaints about who's in charge and the money and the blah, blah, blah. But we don't ever just get down and push through it. I'm looking for a few people that will. That's what I'm looking for. There's a plan to be had, and I'm willing to have it. I'm getting tired of watching us accept less than liberty. I'm tired of watching us sit back and resting on our laurels while this giant machine is just coming through and eating us one piece at a time. Remember that old Twilight Zone, To Serve Man? And these big old tall aliens came down. They're called Canaanites or something like that. And they spoke this language, and they were benevolent, and they were the amazing race, and they spoke with their thoughts. And they had this book that they had set down on the UN, and they struggled to decode it. Meanwhile, this race of aliens comes down, and they're curing diseases, and they're giving unlimited energy, and everybody's in love with these alien race. And they start sending them to their planet to see how they do it. And they're packing people up in these spaceships, and they're going off, and they're going off, and they're going off. And all of a sudden, the teller of the story is he was going to go on this trip, and his partner, this girl, he's getting ready to walk onto the spacecraft like all the rest of them. And she comes running up. Wait, don't go. It's a cookbook. And the door goes up and closes, and he's telling his story from the spaceship where they're trying to fatten him up so that they can take him home to eat him. A little bit far-fetched, but maybe not. Think about who's behind every one of these laws that have passed. Think about the money that's behind it. Think about who benefits from every single law that we've passed. Really get down and be honest with yourself. And I think you're going to find it's not the you and me. I think you're going to find it's not the average person. It's not the person that's living on fixed income. It's not the person who's disabled. It's not the person who needs to grow their own medicine. It's never those people. There's always some big business behind it. There's always big money behind it. And there's always things that keep us, the regular person, from getting what they need. It's just always that way so far. I'm saying we can do better than that. I'm saying that we can change it. I posted a video earlier today about a guy that I met. He may be calling in the show today. Hopefully he does. But I'm working on a project. I've consulting on a extraction facility in a quote legal place down in Southern California somewhere, and I'm teaching them how to run some of their equipment. And this kid he's a good kid. He's young, and he's wanted nothing more than to be in the white market, so they call it. And after working with him a little bit and talking to him, he did some research, and he looked up my some of the stuff I've got published, and he comes back one morning and he's like, oh my God, I got to help you in prohibition. I said, I want to be part of the A team. And I says, well, good, let's make that happen. That's what I need. I need a few people. They don't have to know anything. You don't have to be an activist. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to have any money. You don't have to have any particular talents. But what you do have to have is a willingness to make a difference, to get what the real problem is, to actually get what the problem is. The problem isn't that some people can have some things. The problem is that we, the people, can't have what we want, whatever it is, as long as it doesn't hurt somebody. How dare you tell me the plant I can or cannot grow? How dare you tell me how many jars of oil I can have or cannot have? And yet we like, oh, we're legal. Look what we did. And what happens to that person who needs one more than is allowed? You're a criminal. What happens to the person who decides they want to, they learn how to make something and they make it and they sell it to their friend because it's a reasonable thing to do? You sell a jar of pickled garlic. You sell a bag of, you know, catnip that you grew for your cat. That's totally cool. Everybody's got it. No problem with that. But if you sell the cannabis plant to your friend in another state, you are a criminal 7 different ways. And we're all okay with that. And I say we're all okay with that because we let it happen. And we continue to let it happen. And we're not outraged and we're not doing anything to stop it. We're not doing enough to stop it. And until that is the story, the paradigm, I'm going to keep asking these questions. And I have asked week after week, month after month, show after show, for somebody to come on the show and tell me, why do we need to be taxed and regulated so bad? Explain it to me. We had one guy one time that was scheduled to come on, but he didn't make it somehow. That's it. Not one person has. The one thing this kid said on his own, and I was impressed with this, is he recognized the value of the industry getting involved. The industry stepping up and finishing the job. Those that are benefiting from it, those that are becoming wealthy from it, those that are feeding off of the others with this great cookbook that we have, they could be opening the doors for the rest of us to have some bit of what they're having. And Sarah dares you too. The purpose of this show is to build this team. Excellent. The coffee is coming, folks. The coffee is coming. We're having a cup of Joe without a cup of Joe. So we're doing all right so far. But
I'm going to follow up on that.
That being said, you know, we're starting to get some people standing up. We got the Kansas team that's getting active, getting alive. We got Central California team getting alive. They're coming alive. Headquarters is rearing its head again. We've got Ohio doing great. We got New York. My God, they're on TV.
Whoop, whoop.
They're on TV every single week. Every single week. And we're out there representing now. We're getting our voices heard. And the politicians that are supposed to be representing us are starting to have to listen to us because we're now talking to them. We're going to their house and we're knocking on their door and we're saying, so what do you think about this? And so why don't you support this? Or why do you support this? It's up to us. Status quo is status quo. We already know what that is. It's what we've already got. You stop and think about your representatives. And frankly, I don't think that a representative republic is a bad system of government. I don't think it's a bad system of government at all. I think it requires an active populace to make it be what it could and should be. And that's what we don't have. All right, we got Craig Cecil calling in, and then we got an amazing treat. Becca Nichols is going to tell us a story today. And it's a good one. Craig Cecil serving life in prison for pot, and we let it happen, and we need to make it not happen anymore. Life in prison. Hello, Craig Cecil. How are you doing today?
Hello, Joe. I'm looking out the window here in Terre Haute, Indiana, and it's stone dark, and it's 20-something degrees outside, so I don't think it looks like your window.
No, It's been very windy out here. There's been firestorm in California again. Northern California is on fire, and Southern California, right along Malibu, where there's a lot of rich folks up there. Their houses are burned up, and it's another mess. We get these Santa Ana winds that blow in off the desert this time every year, and it was a drought year again. So everything is just tinder dry, and the last couple of years, the power poles have been the culprit. The winds blow across the high tension lines, and they start sparking, and then the power line will drop, and these wildfires get going. There's a town called Paradise, California, and within 24 hours, like 7,000 buildings burned down. It's just unbelievable.
Well, I think a lot of your listeners know Amy, and I got an email from Amy earlier today that announced that hers was one of the only houses in her subdivision not to burn, but at least her house is not burned.
Yeah. She's I forgot she's in that district there. Yeah. It's crazy. There's been a lot of fancy houses right on the beach there that are now just a pile of rubble and dust. And then, like I said, in Northern California, in Paradise up above Sacramento, same thing happened. It's 100,000 acres in a matter of a couple of days. It's really been insane.
Right, I understand it wiped out the whole town, and there's at least 50 people known dead, and like up to 200 still missing. Wow, what a tragedy.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who I just saw today, and one of the things that's happening, unfortunately, is this is harvest time, and people are trying to get their crops out, and a lot of people, obviously anybody that's in that neck of the woods, everything's gone. But there's actually people coming through the burnt areas and robbing people and looting them. People that have farms and they're just trying to get everything out. I heard there was a couple of guys with assault rifles going up and trying to rob their crops. And then, of course, you got, the cops knowing that all these things are happening are targeting, people with trailers and whatnot. And this guy luckily got his crop out, and he's down here safe. So I'm very pleased. At least one person I know survived that and got his crop out, and he's all right. So, but just there's a lot of people who aren't. A lot of people who, imagine your livelihood relying on an agricultural crop, right? And you're in some stage of harvesting it, some stage of drying it, preparing it, and then the fire comes and you're forced to evacuate, and there's people out there pillaging and rampaging, and you got to be gone. Imagine what that might feel like. I mean, just a horror story.
In my mind, I compare that to cattle rustling, which I think still can result in a person being hanged.
Oh yeah. Oh no, they don't take that very lightly out there. That's for sure. But it's the truth. I mean, it is what it is. People.
Oh yeah.
I was just talking about humanity and the ruthlessness that people historically have been, and it seems in a lot of ways that we're doing. People talk about how horrible things are, but actually, historically, we're much more civilized than we ever have been in any point of our history. But there's still plenty of bad folks out there doing a lot of bad things.
Well, we had another adventure with that netted us being locked down over the weekend here again.
Oh no.
In the institution here, which opened in 1937, it used to house all the death row inmates for the federal government. Now what they did is they built a new prison across the street, as you know, the USP, and they moved the death row over there, but the death row that's in my building they used to house terrorists. It's a special unit where they're really not allowed to use the mail much or phone or all that. They're super monitored in there. And last weekend, one of them killed another one.
Oh no!
And I don't, and I don't know why. But even though granted we walked past the door of that cell block and everything, but we have no contact with them. By design, they're not allowed to have contact with anybody. But they still locked the rest of us in our cells for a few days and gave us bologna.
Oh, jeez. Well.
Unfortunately, this week the institution is just got all kinds of people just bouncing off the walls and everything, and the channels that we get on email that are usually like advising us on new cases in the courts and new laws and things of that nature. They've been all abuzz with that Congress is considering some changes to the federal criminal.
This call is from a federal prison.
And some of the proposed changes are like changing some mandatory minimums, changing that prisoners have to earn certain things like telephone time and halfway house time and things like that. There's a handful of changes, even like seemingly sensible changes, like women shouldn't have to be handcuffed while giving birth.
Yeah, you'd think that might be just a little bit extreme. I can't imagine a woman giving birth being a threat to anybody.
No, I don't see him as an escape risk.
No.
Then again, I'm not the Bureau of Prisons, and there's a lot of places I don't see eye to eye with them.
Right. I wonder what the numbers are.
So many rumors running around. I just heard a rumor a little while ago that somebody put out that the president signed something and 18,000 inmates are going home in January. And I mean, these rumors are abounding, and it's really kind of pitiful, the way it's going around. I'm sure that's not true, or we would have actually known that.
I haven't heard it
before the president signed it. But,
I haven't heard a thing about that.
But you know what I mean? The inmates are all abuzz, and everywhere you go, and that's all you hear is, what about the bill? What about the bill in Congress? What about the bill? And that's just all the buzz right now. And unfortunately, I think it's going to make for a lot of long faces at Christmas. Maybe they'll pass a little something somewhere, but I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, generally this time of year, if you look historically, not a whole lot happens between now and the end of the session.
Yes, but like I say, the prison is all abuzz with that. I mean, there's people that unfortunately are believing what other people told them, that they're going home soon and all that. So it's kind of a mess. And me being one of the legal beagles here, I'm one of the ones that they consult a lot. I try to keep all the writing stuff in my hand so I can just say, read here.
Well, they've got. I just looked it up right now, and there's a bill, HR 64, Federal Prison Bureau Nonviolent Offender Relief Act of 2017, but it's just been introduced. It hasn't even gone to a vote on either side, so it's not. It has no chance of passing. In fact, it hasn't done anything since January 2017. I don't know if that's the bill they're talking about. Here's another one. Reform bill may release prisoners' time by nearly 40 years. And this is in reference to, in a bipartisan vote and with the strong support of federal President Trump, the House added another chapter to the decriminalization project by passing a backdoor revision of the criminal sentencing law, the First Step Act, described by both political parties in the media as prison reform, as an acronym for its grandiose and salvic purpose. Formerly incarcerated, re-enter society, transformed, safety, transition, and every person act. The House passed the bill without hearings, bipartisan vote 25-5 in the Judiciary House Committee, sent the bill to the floor. And see, this is an old article though. Wait a minute. This is trying to get a timestamp on this thing.
If it's the first act, I think that the House actually passed that. Oh, I believe it was.
I think it's May.
July or August.
Yeah, they're talking about May 25th. So this is not anything that is even today. It hasn't gone through the Senate, that's for sure. So, I mean, that's the only thing I could find hitting a search right now.
In your pajamas on.
But unfortunately, a lot of congressmen have put out these big comprehensive bills that, you know, they'll never get consensus on everything that's in it. And I'd like to at least see them take some baby steps and go after, you know, some small changes. As you know, my biggest push is to make drug crimes have the same statutory maximum of 20 or 25 years that a non-murder violent crime has. I think, to me, that would be an easy sell to say, you know, let's make distribution of marijuana at the same maximum as an aggravated assault.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, here it is. You know what? I think I got where it's coming from. Trump made some kind of a comment about this, and he was saying that if this bill passes the Senate by January, and he's kind of urging them to do it, but there's nothing that says that there's any indication that anything's going to happen. It was just, you know, Trump likes to talk about a lot of things. I think he just made a comment about it, and that he would support it. I mean, he would sign it, I think, if it came through, but there's nothing about the Senate aggressively trying to make it happen.
Right. And as you know, our Congress just seems to be pretty much dysfunctional. So it's hard to get, you know, the needed number of people to agree on anything in this Congress.
Well, it's too bad there's not a value on being dysfunctional, because I would say they're really good at it.
Like I'd like to see more progress made on, you know, getting the federal government out of marijuana regulation.
Hey, I would love that.
The
They could get out of a lot of stuff, if you ask me.
It seems like that would be a no-brainer, but nobody seems to have the will to get it up for a vote. You know, yes, some people would oppose it. People like you and I remember back in the 70s were under President Clinton, or President Carter, they voted on it. But, I mean, the whole views of marijuana and the use of marijuana, everything about marijuana has changed since those days. And I think it's time to actually put it up for a vote. Let the people speak.
I couldn't agree more, and that's part of what the topic of the show is today, is getting up there. You know, when are we going to be sick of the status quo? When are we going to be sick of every election cycle going and we just whine and bitch and we don't get out there and do something about it? When is that going to happen? And I've about had it. I think it's time. I'm trying to build a team of people willing to get up there and take the, you know, exceptional action that's necessary. And I think that we're starting to do it. We're going to start gaining some small victories, and we're going to stack them on top of each other till we get the larger one. There's your first beep there, Craig. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you finish it out.
Okay, but as you know, my push is still, you know, get a hold of Congress, get a hold of your congressman, get a hold of a lot of congressmen. Nowadays, you know, regular post office mail, you know, everybody's afraid of that, especially in Washington, D.C. recently with those letter bombs and all that. So I'd love to see people, you know, go to these generic addresses, get to your state, you know, representative, get to your state senator and tell them, you know, you need to call up marijuana for a vote. You need to express the will of your people. Over 70% of people want it legalized nowadays. That should be a no-brainer to get half of the House and half of the Senate to vote for it.
I couldn't agree more. And I've even put out some incentives for people that are willing to, you know, get up there and show me proof that they reached out to their congressman, that they had a conversation with them. I've got prizes. I got T-shirts. I got ribbons. I got stuff I'll give away for anybody to show me that you actually had a conversation with your representative, and at least, start the dialogue. I got the worst congressman in the world, and we've started numerous dialogues. He always falls back to the white paper BS. But if enough people started pinging on him, one of two things would happen. Either he wouldn't get reelected for the 30th term, or he might wake up and decide to listen to us. Well, there it goes. Cut off again. Craig Cecil. Craig Cecil calls into the show every single week. He is serving life in prison. That's about as heavy as it gets. I don't think any of us could imagine that. I don't think any of us could really wrap their head around what it would be like to be stuck in prison for the rest of your life without any hope of parole, without any way of getting out. And especially knowing, I could put myself in a spot where I did something horrible and I got caught, or I turned myself in, or whatever was going on, and I had to atone for that. I had to pay the price for what I did. I could imagine doing something, probably out of an act of rage or something like that, that would be worthy of a horrible punishment that I might have deserved, and what it would be like to live with that. At least I could have the solace of knowing that, I'm atoning, I'm paying my price for what I did to somebody. Craig Cecil didn't do anything to anybody. He didn't harm anybody. His crime was a conspiracy crime. He was actually guilty of fixing trucks. And every single other person that's involved in this case is already free. And Craig serves a life sentence. And he calls into the show every week. 15 minutes he gets to talk, to have a little bit of freedom, to have a little bit of hope, to be able to speak to the outside world. He risks the little bit of rights he has in there. He's not allowed to do that. We don't have permission to do that. In a lot of ways, it's funny. I talk to people all the time about pushing things forward. And I'm telling you this, I speak to more people about real fundamental change, about real things, and people are afraid. People are so worried about things being legal rather than being right. And I wonder, what does it take to get somebody who's so worried about something being legal, so worried about getting in trouble, to just do the right thing, to stand up against something that's not right? What does it take? And I'm watching what it takes. I'm watching more of us. I'm excited about it, to be honest. We got a fire burning in Kansas. We got some good folks in Kansas that are working together, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with them. We've got a new chapter popping up in Central Cali. Scott and Nikki are listening, and I think I don't know, they might be calling in to talk about something today. We've got Ohio, New York, Florida's getting ready to step up with one, maybe even two chapters. People are standing up going, yeah, you know what? You're right. We have it easy, folks. Most of us have it really easy. Even those that have it tough, go look around the rest of the world and see what it's like. We have it pretty damn easy. And yet, we're willing to be pushed around with this. All right, I'm burning up a lot of time, but I really feel strongly about this. If you are interested in helping me end prohibition, being part of this A-team, and you're not doing it already, get a hold of me. Get a hold of me. I'm easy to reach. Go to the website, thsintl.org. go to the contact page, say, hey, I want to help. I want to do this. I want to be part of the A team. This is what I want. We're working on a very specific plan. We're working on ways that we can all lock arms and bring this together with a unified message and a way to grow, to teach the teachers, to teach the trainers, to get people to know how to raise up an army in their own backyard. That's what this is about. We have to raise up where we're needed. We don't have a giant army that can travel across the country at will when somebody is got a problem. We need to learn how to raise up and do this because it works when we do it. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later if there's time. All right, now we got a very, 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 very special guest on. And I'm going to sort of lead into this a little bit, but about a month ago or so, I had a very special experience, and a friend of mine introduced me to a man who is from the Southern Cheyenne tribe from Montana, and he's a medicine man, and he came down, and he was in kind of a financial spot, and I was told he had this teepee, and I said, well, maybe I'll help him out. I'll buy this teepee from him, and you know, it'll help us both out. I've always kind of wanted to do a native ceremony out here, and let's see what happens. Well, anyways, he comes down and spent, I don't know, the better part of a week at my place, and we did a ceremony, and we put this teepee up, and like I said, I spent 5 days with this man and got to learn about the Cheyenne way. And, you know, there's good and there's bad around in every which way, and different civilizations and different societies and different peoples all over the world have experienced these things in different ways. And to get in touch with yourself and to connect with your creator. And a lot of people will seriously disagree with me and say that there's only one way to do this. And I'm not here to disagree with anybody. I'm not here to make a religious statement. I just want to say that the experience that we had over those 5 days, doing the peyote ceremony and experiencing that way was a powerful experience for me. And when we were in this this ceremony, it was an all-night thing. It started in the late evening and went on until the early morning. And in the process of this, there's all these different roles, and one of the roles was a sponsor. And the sponsor is a man who is training more or less to be a medicine man, to learn the way, to be able to conduct these ceremonies on his own. And so we're in there, and the whole idea was that I had made my property available to do this, and we let people come and be part of this. And I didn't want to put my will into this as much as I could have. And I'm working really hard to accomplish a lot of things right now, and you know, the human solution is a big part of it, but I'm doing a lot of other things as well. And I'm focusing really hard. My case has been over for 6 years now, or 5 years, 4 years, whatever. It's been over for a little while. And I'm working hard now to make a better world for my family and for the people around me and for the whole world. And when we were in there, one of the first things that happened was that we established what the intention of this was. So the ceremony is basically a big prayer. And when you go to do this, there's a stated intention. And the effort that you put into this ceremony is about this intention. And so the the sponsor of this, much to my surprise, had stated a big part of his intention for the human solution and the work that we do and the people that are part of this organization. He has been touched by an experience. He's watched us operate. He had a case going on at the same time that I had my case going on. We were both locked up at the same time. We didn't really know each other at the time, but we knew of each other, and we had some common friends, and that's how we got together. But when he said that, it kind of choked me up, because I thought to myself, we've reached people in a profound way, so much so that they want for us. And when people understand that for us is for all of us, it's not the little us, it's the big us. You know, everything that we want is for all of us. It's for all of the people. We don't want a law to be passed that lets one county and one state have some limited thing. We want the people to be free, to have things that are good and righteous and good for us. And we start with this plant, but there's so many more places for it to go. And throughout this ceremony, it got brought up, you know, in different places. There was places for people to express their blessings and their prayers. And it was very powerful experience. And I can't help but think that what's happening now with the organization and with some of the people rising up and really getting a fire in their belly and really starting to get it, I can't help but think that we are being blessed in a very special way that that is very powerful and connected to all of our roots, connected to our heritage. You know, they say if we stand tall, it's because we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. And in some circles, I would be considered an ancestor, and yet I stand tall on those that walk before me, and those stand on those that walk before them, and it goes on until the first person stood up for the first time. And it was a really powerful experience. And I shared this a little bit with our executive team. And I've begun to work with some of the native peoples. And it's funny because they call themselves Indians. And as we're so busy being correct and making sure we say words right, they don't give a damn. They call themselves Indians. Anyways, that all being said, the Human Solution a while ago, 2 years ago, when we had our last election before this one, we had agreed to open up our mission beyond just the fight to end prohibition. And we opened up the mission to include disabled rights. And we determined that there's a lot of overlap. A lot of disabled folks are suffering tremendously because of prohibition in a very specific and special way. And we wanted to make sure that it opened up our ability as a 501c3 to do work that supported them and keep it in our mission. And then a year and a half ago or so, when we were working with Chris Lewandowski, the Marine, we also opened up our mission a little bit to include veterans and veterans' rights. And on behalf of that, as it was Veterans Day a couple of days ago, I raised my glass to all the veterans. I'm not a big fan of the war machine, and there's been many horrors that have been accomplished by the war machine. But this war machine fought tyranny at one time and created a landscape that we could grow in, and that we were able to thrive and go through our process. And here we are today. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the warriors that stood up and paved the way for this to happen. And the world would be a different and probably a lot worse place if it wasn't for the warriors that paved the way. And it doesn't mean that everything they do is good and righteous by any means, but the world we live in today is carved out by their bravery. So I do deeply respect those that have made that choice, and anybody who has ever served, I deeply respect your work, your service. That being said, through this, I've been working with a number of the Native women, especially. There's a lot of hardships that have gone on, and I'm not here to, again, debate the American historical perspective, but a lot of really shitty things happened to the people that were here before we came. And a lot of it is humanity, regardless of what happened, today we own today. That's where we're at. And a lot of these people have opportunities today that they didn't have, and they're still struggling. But there's tremendous poverty in the reservations and in the Native tribes, tremendous drug abuse, spousal abuse, violence. It's really a tragedy in many, many ways. And so I've sort of pledged myself to work with this medicine man to, to send some of the things that we do to some of the folks and hopefully help them. And I was talking to Becca, who's one of our executive directors, board member, and our treasurer. And she told me that she walked across America in support of Native rights a while ago. And I said, what? Couldn't believe it. Walked across America. So I've been trying to get her to come on for the last few weeks. And Becca's gone through some really terrible personal issues, had a tremendous loss in her life. And one of the things that we teach, or that I try to learn and teach, is that, life goes on, and we go through difficulties, we go through hardships, we go through tragedies. But the thing that separates us from everybody else is us. What do we do with that? And do we keep showing up? Do we keep making life for the living? Do we keep doing what we can every single day? Because you know what? The days go by. Craig Cecil's still locked up in prison. And all the other people that are still in prison are still there, regardless of whether we had a good day or a bad day. And things are not going to change until we change them. And Becca has always been somebody who, again, I've said this before, there was a time when we were going through some of our growing pains, and, our membership was kind of thin. And I told her, I said, you know what? I'll carry this thing on my back if I have to. And she says, I'll carry it with you. So Becca is one of a wonderful and unique person, and she has a spirit of a lion. And in fact, we just got our banners in, and the Oregon chapter that Becca heralds is the Lionheart chapter, which I couldn't agree with more. Anyways, Becca's going to tell us a little bit about her story, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we're opening up and expanding our mission. And Becca, it is always a treat to have you be part of the show. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. It's a good day.
Oh, good. Fantastic. Fantastic. So I am just dying to hear about this trip. First of all, I mean, what caused that to happen? I mean, what causes somebody to say, I know, I'm going to go walk across America?
What caused me to do it?
Yes.
Oh, that's the funny part. Okay, so I was 21 at the time, and I thought I was a really enlightened 21, but I was really an immature 21. And I just gone through a breakup and was feeling all down and depressed. And a native friend of mine, an Alaskan native, said he was going on this walk across the U.S. to support this guy. I didn't know who this guy was, named Leonard Peltier. And so I just thought, what the hell? I'm going with you. And so I got rid of all my stuff. I got rid of my apartment, quit my job, and I went on this walk. So it was with totally selfish intentions that I went on this walk, actually.
So tell me about, what was the, this walk, was it, I mean, was it a sponsored thing, or how did it come together?
It came together through AIM, which is the American Indian Movement. It's an activist group for Indians.
And Dennis Banks, he's the co-founder of the American Indian Movement. He decided he's done multiple walks, but he decided he was going to walk from California and follow the Trail of Tears all the way through to D.C. In protest of Leonard Peltier being locked up in federal prison, and as well as other Native issues and rights that it was going to be brought to Washington, D.C. All the issues were. So that was the point of that.
And where did you begin the journey?
I began the journey in Colorado. I caught up to them in Colorado. We almost crashed a million times because we were driving into a blizzard. And so I caught up with them in Colorado in a freaking blizzard.
Oh, great.
I caught up with them at.
And so how many people were there? I mean, the total of the group that was walking.
I'd say the core group of us was probably only maybe between 20 and 30 people. By the time we got to DC, like is with any event, thousands of people joined on to walk into DC, and we had a huge event in Washington, D.C. the day we arrived. But the core was about 20 to 30 people.
And as you're going along, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard the term the Trail of Tears, but what is that?
The Trail of Tears was back in the 1700s when they rounded up all the Indians, and they walked them. Most of them died. They walked them through half of the United States, like internment camps, basically. These people, they given them reservations and all that stuff. So that's the Trail of Tears.
Yeah, and it was really a brutal. It was probably one of the lowest points that I can think of our society and some of the things that we did. It was just a brutal act that did not have any humanity connected to it. And like you said, most of them didn't survive. There's been a few annihilations that have gone on in our history, and that was one of them. And that was one that I just think that, again, a lot of people just don't know. They hear little bits and pieces about things, and they kind of make assumptions, but they don't necessarily understand what's behind it. And there's different points of view. Some people say, well, these people didn't have their own place anyways. They drifted around and they went from here to there, and we just took some of their space and moved more where they weren't. There's a lot. Again, I'm not here to make a judgment call on it. I just think that was a horrible thing that happened. And the most important thing is where are we at today? And so, even though this was a few years back, you were walking through reservations. How many reservations do you think you stopped through?
God, I was trying to think back on that. I'd say at least 10. A couple stuck out really clearly to me because, a lot of people don't realize either that the reservation, the land they gave to the natives, the reservations was the worst land in any state or territory at that time. It was the worst of the worst, and nobody wanted it. So some of the reservations I stopped on, the poverty was horrible on every reservation I stopped on. I didn't pass one rich one. And some didn't even have working plumbing. A lot of them were surviving on state food commodities. But these people would open up their houses to us because as we walked along, we just slept wherever we could. We slept in public parks. We slept in, wherever outside. But they would open their houses to us and they would feed us, fry bread and hominy soup and whatever they could. And they would give us tobacco, and they were so generous and gracious with what little they had. And the conditions were horrible. That's what just kept, every time I just couldn't believe that people had to live like that in that kind of poverty.
It's interesting. I've noticed, I've been working with a lot of people for a lot of years for a lot of different reasons, a lot of different causes, a lot of different groups. And generally, I'd have to say that generally people suck. a lot of people are just, frankly, if I was an alien and I landed on this place, and not just in America, everywhere, I've seen shitty people all over the world, and generally selfishness and laziness and just oppressiveness and just overall shittiness. I think there's a pretty high percentage of people, but you know, in every single walk, and it seems to come out more so in the impoverished places than the high-end places. But again, maybe I've spent more time in impoverished places than high-end places to know that. But it seems that I've seen people just really be their highest selves in many cases when they don't have anything to give, and they don't have anything, and they'll give you the couch to sleep on. They'll give you whatever. If they got a sandwich, they'll break it in half and give you half of it. I've seen that kind of behavior. You know, it might only be 1 or 2% of the people, but it's the thing to me that says this human race is worth it. And I think that maybe that behavior can be inspiring to others. I think the one thing about humans is that we have the ability to change. We're not stuck being the way we are. We're not stuck being who we are. We all have the ability to wake up. We all have the ability to rise up out of whatever problem we're in. We have the ability to overcome addictions and abusive behaviors and anything really. You know, you look through history and there's been a number of stories of bad people that turned into be good people after a while. And I just can't help but think that that's a big part of what all of this is about. The big work that we're doing, the big, you know, what the human solution is all about really is about, you know, sort of making a fundamental change to the core of humanity and, you know, reaching in and just tweaking it just a little bit to get that goodness that we have inside of us that I think everybody has, whether they express it or not. What do you think if you were to boil down maybe 1 or 2 experiences of this? You know, how long did it take you? 6 months to walk?
It took us a total of, I believe it was 4 months. I mean, I walked myself personally 25 to 30 miles a day. Yeah.
That's a good clip.
So,
that's a good clip. I bet you're in pretty good shape by the time you were done.
I was so skinny. Oh, God, yeah. I went down so many pant size, it was ridiculous. But it only took me about 2 weeks to gain back 27 pounds after the walk was over.
Yeah, isn't it funny how one direction goes the hard way? One direction, I don't know. It's pretty easy to put it back. That's for
really fast.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I started getting a little tummy. I'm like, wow, because I went back with a couple of guys I met in Ohio. They were from Ohio. I went back to their place, and we were just living at large and eating, you know, and laying around, and we all put on little, just from the fear, like, yeah, just no activity, you know.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, right?
I have two memories from the walk that stick out that I still to this day can remember so clearly, or 3, I guess, 3.
All right. Well, why don't you share them with us? Yeah.
Yeah. One was we had this Buddhist nun on the walk. She'd been on walks all over the United States for all kinds of reasons, and she had a Buddhist monastery in New York. And she was an ex-terrorist, actually. She said she used to bomb places, ride a motorcycle. Heavy lady, but she was obviously not anymore. She was a Buddhist nun.
Wow.
I walked with her because she was so inspiring. And I walked with her and drummed. And then when we got to Leavenworth, which is where Leonard Peltier was imprisoned, the prison, for some reason, had given us permission. They cordoned off a little square outside the prison.
Wow.
They allowed us to fast and chant and drum. We would chant and drum from the minute the sun came up till the minute the sun went down. For 4 days we did this. No food, no water, nothing.
Wow.
And he could hear us inside. We found out he could hear us very clearly inside, chanting and drumming, which was really, really cool.
That's powerful. I could almost feel that. I could almost feel that.
Then another one was we used to hold events probably every 2 days. We would hold a drum circle or some event to try to spread the word about what we were doing and all that stuff. And this one event, this gentleman came up to me. We had these sweatshirts made somehow that had the Walk for Justice on them and all that, in a year. And he asked if he could buy my sweatshirt. He wanted to buy my sweatshirt and donate the money to our cause and have all of us sign it. And he was going to have it given to Leonard Peltier. And my sweatshirt was nasty. We didn't bathe, we didn't have access to running water. You know what I mean? We stunk. My hair was matted. But I gave him the sweatshirt, and I guess Leonard Peltier did get that sweatshirt.
Wow.
Nasty, dirty sweatshirt that we all signed.
Wow. That is fantastic. It's funny.
Yeah.
When I was locked up, and it was 6 years ago. Right now, I was behind bars. There was some friends of mine. This was when the Occupy thing was going on in Oregon. And I had some friends. Actually, one of our longest 420 members is one of the people that are up there. And they actually wrote a song about my case and published it. But they sent me this little quilt. And it was from the Occupy Oregon, Occupy Portland people. And they had made this little quilt. And they had all, while I was locked up, they had done a similar thing. And I have this little piece. It's the patchwork, from Occupy Oregon. And they did it for me when I was locked up. It was really a powerful little thing. I can almost, it's kind of a different connection, but it's a powerful thing. When people do exceptional actions, I think it makes a change. I think you probably gave Leonard some juice that helped get him through that. I mean, it's a big thing when people get together and take an action. And that's what I think, that why can't we get together and come up with, some extraordinary action? We have people all across the country and even in other countries that are thinking about working together, that are talking about working together, that are putting our hearts and our minds and our thoughts into ending prohibition. I can't help but think maybe there's something big brewing in the next little while that comes out of it. So did you feel, do you have Native American blood in you?
I do, actually, but I didn't know that really at the time. I wasn't aware of that. And I ended up she's technically my stepdaughter. I've raised her since birth, but she's half Native. So, and that was after the walk. Because it was just something to do at the time when I went on it, but the whole experience transformed me. I came out a completely different being than when I went on it. It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm an activist. That was the beginning. And,
this connection to, the Native people, we're all a Native people from somewhere. We all have a source of, our ancestors or whatnot. But at the end of the day, this is about humanity. And it really doesn't matter what runs through your blood. I've more or less walked away from most of my bio family as a result of being an activist and caring about the bigger picture. I learned that blood really doesn't mean a whole lot in that bigger picture, but this is my family. This is the people that I've chosen to be with, the people that have chosen to be with me. And I have to think, as you went through this and you said it awoke your activism heart, and it seems that there's this connection, these people that are suffering, that I have to believe that cannabis could be helpful in so many ways. The alcohol, the heroin, the meth, the abuse, the poverty, it just goes on and on and on. And yet you think about cannabis as a source of positive things, as a source of healing, as a source of even raising income, as a source of turning. It's almost the antithesis to all those things. I have to think that maybe, you know, with this experience I had and connecting with that it's time that we open up our mission a little bit. And we've talked about it, and I think we're going to ultimately vote on it, but to including the Native American rights and the plight of the Native American tribes, the non-casino reservations, which are plentiful. You know, if you ever drive across the country, or if you ever spend any time, you know, traveling around on foot or you know, just in your car, you realize there's reservation land wherever you go. I mean, it's in every in every rural place. You'll come upon, you know, this reservation goes into that one, and if there's not a big casino sitting on it that they're feeding off of, generally speaking, you're going to be dealing with some major poverty and all of the societal woes that come from that. And addiction is usually.
I believe the natives are also some of the minorities that are really forgotten. They're like the quiet, silent, hidden minorities that people forget about, that are just as affected as African Americans and Hispanics and everybody else, but they're just kind of pushed to the side. You know, you just don't notice them or think about them. That's part of what pulled me to that in particular, is that they've been forgotten.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, you know, it's interesting. I was going to tell the story somewhere during the show. This might be a perfect time. Last night I was doing some writing. I'm trying to get back into writing, and I was just getting started doing it. My wife had on the PBS channel, and there was first story was about the Japanese and Chinese in World War II, and then the second story came on, and it was about the Native American, the Cherokee, and you know the conquistadors, and then the U.S. Army killing off all their horses, and that was kind of a horror story. And then after that, they did a show about these Peruvian Indians, and they were the bridge builders. And it was the most remarkable thing I'd ever seen. Every year, there's this group of people, and I believe it's in Peru, and they have this grass bridge that spans across this big giant canyon over the water. And every year, they cut the old bridge down, and they spend, I don't know how long it takes them to do it, but there's like 700 people, and it was
like 2 days. It took them like 2 days.
Yeah, and
the amount of people.
These people, they just start getting the grass, and they spin it around into a rope, and they take the ropes and they lay them out, and then they braid the ropes, and then they drag them across, and they stretch them across this thing, and they get out there and they tie these things. But you know, it's the most amazing community effort. And when I was watching this thing happen, and I watched them pull the new rope across, and I realized that there's not any way that any one of those people could have ever even put a dent in that. Even half of those people couldn't have come close to doing that. But when all of them worked together, when all of them decided, you know, and I'll bet you all of those people in that group didn't like each other. I bet you they weren't all friends. They weren't all, probably some of them couldn't stand each other. Probably some of them were jealous and bitter and whatever, all the humanity problems that we have. But they decide every year that it's more important to be able to walk across to the other side over there and have access to that and have that freedom and that liberty that bridge gives them. And they put their shit aside, and they get together and they work together. And when I saw that laid out, and the joy that all those people got when the old rope got cut down and landed it all hundreds of feet down into the water, and they laid out this beautiful, beautiful new bridge made out of grass. Literally, it's made out of the grass that grows in the prairie. And I thought to myself, why can't we do that? Why won't we do that? And then I couldn't come up with a reason. So I've decided we should do that. We should worry about getting together and coming up with the project that requires a lot of people, and getting those people together and making it happen. I think I was inspired by that. I thought to myself, I can't come up with a reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. So I think that
I watched the same documentary. That's funny, and I had the same kind of reaction to it. Like, so I mean, they all came together. Yeah.
They all came together and they got it done. So I think that, it's been a message for many years now. I look back and every once in a while I'll go back and I'll watch some old videos or some things that we talked about way back when, and the message hasn't changed that much. But maybe how we go about it, instead of just, standing on a public place and trying to rally people, I think what we're doing now in just trying to get a few good people that are willing to dig in and put an effort, to struggle through this, to give enough of an effort that is worthy of somebody else stepping in and saying, let me help. The amount of physical and spiritual and psychological, all the different ways that you have to put effort to make that bridge happen. They all did it. They all came to work, and they all put it out there, and they all gave it their all, and they made it happen. And they know they could, and I know that we can. So I really think that maybe that's the lesson that we can take from all of this. And, really thinking about what that project can be that we can use to unite us, that bridge that we can build to connect enough of us together to get that liberty that we're after.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Think of something.
Well, what do you think if there was one sentence that you could sum it all up in? Obviously that trip changed you. It affected you, and in a profound and obviously a very positive way. I don't know. I didn't know you before that, but I know who you are today, and I can't help but saying good job, because it made you into quite an incredible person. So do you have like one thing that you took from it?
Yeah, like before I went on that walk, I was painfully shy. I couldn't make eye contact. I had trouble holding conversations with people. I left that walk feeling I had no shyness left. I could talk in front of groups. I could talk to strangers. And I always had compassion and empathy, but I had a level of compassion and empathy that I never could have imagined having before that walk. And it just essentially, I felt like it woke me up. It woke me the fuck up in all ways.
I think that's a good lesson. I think that's the lesson that we need to have. Like I said, that kid that I'm working with down in Southern California, he had that wake the fuck up moment. I remember when Liz McDuffie got it about why jury nullification was a real important thing. That moment, that epiphany. I think that's the key to it all. We all need to stop and think. If we haven't had an epiphany, maybe we should start thinking about having one. Maybe it's time to do something exceptional to find that thing that's in all of us. And if we have it, maybe it's time to start sharing it.
Something like that too. You have to do something outside of yourself.
Yes.
Because this all involved nothing to do with me. It involved actually me suffering, really. But everything was outward. It was towards other people, towards helping someone else. So I don't think you can have that epiphany without that outward view.
I think that what happens, I know when it woke me up, it was when they locked me up. When I was in a concrete room that I couldn't get out of, all of a sudden I almost literally felt something inside of me just tore its way out of my heart and said, fuck you. And but I mean, that was it. It was that thing. I can tell you exactly that moment where I was starting to feel claustrophobic, and I was feeling like, oh shit, what have I done? And all of a sudden that thing came out of me, and I've never been the same since. And I know that many people that have gone on to be leaders, gone on to be inspirations, gone on to do things with their lives that have helped the world, made the world different and better, have had a moment, have had something that they had to overcome or be with. Sometimes it's helping somebody else overcome something. It's just as important to be part of somebody else's awakening, because it can reach out to you as well. But I think that's it. I think that as I'm watching the comments being made on these feeds and the people that have had them get it, maybe it's time. Let's look inside yourself. If you haven't had an awakening, maybe it's time to have one. If you have had one, maybe it's time to share it. This is a lesson that I've gotten from the universe many times. And when you go through something horrible, and when you survive something horrible, whatever it is, it could be a death, it could be conquering a disease, it could be conquering an addiction or whatever, it could be anything. But when you do that, when you survive something horrible, you're given a gift simply by surviving it. And that gift is a gift of empathy, and a gift that could give you compassion. And compassion, to me, is the ultimate end of this. If we have compassion, we actually want better for somebody else. And it's that compassion that I think drives the core of the human solution. But that gift of saying, I know what it's like. I've been where you are. I've seen, experienced this thing that you're going through. It enables you to be able to help raise them up. And I think that that's part of this whole deal, is we're raising ourselves up. This is, I think they call it edification. We're raising up out of this mess that we're all in. And, you know, it comes from the spirit. It comes from our divine creation. It comes from us. It comes from inside of us. And that's, I think, what it's all about. And, you know, I think that that's just a real powerful thing. Well, Becca, I am just really, really pleased that you were able to share that with us. And, you know, in spite of all the things that you've been going through, I am just so proud that you're standing there with me and this group and helping us raise up out of this oppression that we've let us get into.
Thank you. I'm glad I got to share it, because it's something I did. It's a part of my life. I don't think about how huge it really was, you know, until I say something, and then I remember that, yeah, that's a pretty major deal.
Yeah, I would say I would say that sets you apart from, I don't know, probably 99.3% of all the people out there. I'd say that makes you quite exceptional. Well, I'm only sorry I wasn't there to experience that with you, but I was probably going through my own personal thing at the time. But anyways, Becca, I'm so glad that you were able to join the show and share that. And everybody has been really, really impressed with you. Every time you come on the show, everybody loves it. So I thank you for doing it.
Thanks, Becca.
Thank you.
All right. Once again, folks, Becca Nichols, she has become a dear friend. She started out as a peer, somebody who came in at a time of our need with the organization. And she's one of these people that shows the value of showing up, putting your professional hat on, coming to work every day, not taking shit, not taking excuses, not making excuses, just getting in there and getting her done. But through working together, her heart and her humanity have shown through in such a way that is profound. And I'm profoundly blessed to be in your world. All right. We got a good half hour left, and we got a whole bunch of people that are here to talk. Mike Harris is here. Mike's got a cool story that I can't wait to hear. We got a victory in court. The judge ruled in our favor in that case we've been talking about. Tom Corby's back in. That makes me happy. We got Colleen and Bobby, and Creed Leffler. We got a whole bunch of people. So we're going to, I guess, be done with my yapping and get into everybody else's. Mike Harris has been on the show numerous times. He's a former board member of the Human Solution International. He's been part of our media team for a long time, court supporter. He's a solid guy, a guy who has been really walking the walk, not afraid to get in there and work to stand up for things that are right. And he got approached by the DPA and he raised up his hand, I guess is how it all worked, and said, I'll do it. They were looking for a test case to bring to the court in Fontana. Had a really oppressive city ordinance that was a de facto ban of cultivation. They had complete oppression. If you wanted to grow in compliance with Prop 64 in California, you had to go through a criminal background check and open your house to inspections and all kinds of stuff, so much so that nobody did it. And this team of attorneys and advocates got together and they said, we're going to file a lawsuit. And the last time Mike was on, they had just submitted the argument, and it seemed positive. The judge seemed to be kind of spanking the defendants in this case, and they were a formidable army. Best and Krieger is the law firm that represents many cities in California, and they're no slouch. These are some high-paid, high-powered attorneys that are behind some major cities, and they're historically oppressive of cannabis, and they've done a lot of things that have been part of the problem. Anyways, Mike's going to tell us what actually happened and hopefully correct any mistakes I may have made in my interpretation of it. Mike, as always, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you aboard.
It's a pleasure to talk again, Joe. I got to say that all the people that helped me and influenced me, you were right there at the top on, giving me, the spark to, step up. Well,
and step up you did. So tell us what happened.
Well, the issue, and I'll quote like verbatim right from the court order. The issue in this case, this is written by Judge Cohn. The issue in this case is how far a city can restrict the category of persons who are entitled to grow marijuana plants and the circumstances in which they may grow the plants without running afoul of WHOOMA's requirements that regulations be, quote, reasonable, unquote. The city of Fontana has gone too far. And, he said that. And then I'll skip a few lines. The ordinance also imposes onerous restrictions that bear little or no relationship to the activity supposedly being regulated. While many of the provisions of the ordinance are reasonable, the effect of the ordinance as a whole is not to regulate cannabis cultivation for personal use, but to stamp it out entirely. Indeed, the council informs the court that no one has even bothered to apply for the permit required by the ordinance. And that ordinance was out for 2 years. So last Thursday, I went and filed for an application for a permit. Or actually, I filed my application. And then attached to that was the court order. I had printed on my application by my lawyers that they were stipulating there are no fees, and this application has an attachment of the court order, and they are to act guardingly. Basically, every single last fee was struck, so it doesn't cost at this time anybody wanting a permit. It doesn't cost them a penny. It struck any kind of personal inspection. It struck all the provisions that eliminate somebody with a criminal background in the last 5 years, designating one room for the house. Basically, the judge said, since I've struck all of these onerous provisions, excuse me, he was asking the attorney, Stephen Dunn, who was the attorney for BB&K when they gutted 215, by the way. So, like, the man was fit to be tied. You know, what's the connection to all of this? And then the judge could, or the attorney could never answer a single question specifically of what's the connection, you know, with what you're asking with this ordinance and the connections the reasons you're giving. And that was the crux of the thing. Because you can have a bad ordinance and the city's entitled, or you can have, you know, a ridiculous one and the city's still entitled. But if you put something out and then you can't argue it with any kind of legitimacy, and somebody comes up with a writ of mandamus, you know, you better be able to step up, and they couldn't. And, you know, so I filed initially they wouldn't even accept the application. But my advantage, you know, I set up press. You know, I'm having fun with that now, Joe.
I bet you are.
I kind of look, you know, talented at it.
Yes, you are.
I had a reporter from the Press Enterprise and the Orange County Register present, as well as a witness from Normal and Lanny Swerdlow. And so there was cameras present, there was reporters present, and they were very, very nervous. They have 30 days from when I filed, and they're talking about amending the ordinance somehow. And so they have to do that, I guess, it's a city council meeting, which will be on the 27th of this month. So I'll be watching the agendas and see what they come up with and be present and speaking if they try to pull something. Also, my legal team is still 100% intact.
Nice.
They're watching them. They watch the city council meetings now to see what they're going to do, because they, I think, are chomping at the bit of being able to go to the state Supreme Court and set up precedent. And when that happens, if we can get it to happen, this case, you know, will have nothing to do with me and everything to do with anybody over the age of 21 that wants to cultivate in their own home.
Well, hey, that's the exciting part about this whole thing. So the natural progression of this is that they're going to appeal the decision. Do you get you'll get a notice when that's filed or when that process begins?
Well, no, they're trying to rewrite the existing ordinance, which I think, you know, they're very limited on doing, because if they, you know, they've got a court order that struck everything that in this ordinance. So they have the legal right to start over.
Oh, okay.
And do that. And they think they have the right, and this isn't quite of maybe making an amendment to it, to lowering the fees or something. But they have to have a reason for why they have fees in there in the first place.
Right.
You know, when I was talking to the clerk that was accepting the application, he was saying, "We don't accept any applications without a fee." And I said, "Well, you accept this one because I got a court order saying you have to."
Yep.
And, you know, they were incredulous. They says, "Well, expect some fees." And I said, "Well, expect the lawyers talking to you. Out of your hands now."
I love it. You know, one of the things that we've learned over the years is when you're doing something that's righteous and you bring the spotlights out, it tends to cause the rats and cockroaches to get nervous. And, you know, it's a useful tactic. It's something that, you know, when you're standing on the right side of things, we want everybody to see. And I can remember when the judge ordered in my first case return of all my property, and I went to the Riverside Sheriff's Department and with this court order and said, "I'd like to get my pot back." They were like, "Well, and you have to have an appointment." I said, "Well, I'd like to make an appointment." "Well, we can't do that." And it finally took my attorney to file something. I forget what it was, but it took them 3 months with a very clear court order from that judge to return all my property. And they finally did. I drove out of the Riverside Sheriff's Department with 10 pounds of seized cannabis and cannabis products, all in sealed evidence bags, and with no assurance from them that they weren't going to rearrest me. But that happened. And they don't know what to do with it when they lose control for a moment. And every once in a while, a judge gives us the power that we're supposed to have all along. So that is super exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing when they grant this thing, because hell, it's about time you've been able to grow some plants again.
Well, that was the whole intention, of being able to do this. A reporter that wrote one of the stories on this said that only 1 in 7 cities actually has a permit. The rest of them, they just default to the state and say, well, the state says you can do it, just, don't be a nuisance at it, I suppose. And then they would respond then. But they don't write an ordinance that exclude people from participating.
That's probably the proper way to do it. Just default to the state. If the state passed a law, then say let it be. I mean, it's by its own nature a lot more trouble than it's worth to try to enforce something like this unless you have something to take from it. And I think they've had a hard time collecting all the fines that they've issued in all of these. Especially NorCal, they've done a lot of restrictive ordinances as a way to try to stop it, but people just don't pay the fines. They're like, well, screw you. And I think they're finding it's not so worth it to just do that. So anyways, I am super excited. I'm actually kind of sorry I wasn't there to experience some of this with you, but I've been able to at least live vicariously through your telling of it. And one day I look forward to seeing your permitted grow.
Well, perhaps you, but not the city.
No. I certainly would not bring the city with me.
Yeah, they're still trying. It's not over.
Yeah, no, it's not. Well, please feel free to come aboard and give us any updates as they're happening. I get a lot of people that ask me off and on about what's going on with that case in Fontana. So real excited that we're getting that update, and I'm most excited that it happened the way it did. So good work, and good job to the legal team and everybody who is involved.
All right, thanks, Joe.
All right, thanks. Mike Harris again, folks. All right, let's see. We got a lot going on and a little bit of time. We always seem to come down to that place. We got Bobby and Colleen from Crescent City, way up in Northern California. Bobby and Colleen, how you doing today?
You know what? We're doing great, Joe. We just wanted to tell you thank you for taking your time to do this show. And it seems like this is a show that we really, really needed to hear. It's been a great positive, lots of wonderful things being said in a time of a lot of great loss and tragedy, it seems like. And your words and everyone that spoke, Craig Cecil touched my heart. I'm so glad and grateful that he calls in, and I'm thankful and I'm grateful that you take the time out of your busy life to do this show, because tonight it affected me so greatly and it helps me, and I'm thankful for that. And here's Bobby. I love you guys. It's a big hug.
We love you too, Colleen.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Bobby.
Good to see you.
Always.
I'm watching you actually on YouTube. This is so cool. But I love you all. And all these soldiers out there, I'm going to head down and see Tom Corby tomorrow. It's important to unite and keep in touch. Life is precious and short, and this has become one big family for me. I think it's going on about 7 years now. When I met you at Easter time, 2012, I think it was. But hell, I weighed 90 pounds. The doctors had gave up on me. Cannabis saved my life. And there's not a person, a judge, a cop that could ever tell me any different. And it's ridiculous at this point that it's still illegal. I can't understand it. I should be able to go to Walgreens and have my insurance pay for it. A copay, get it for free. If regulating tax, if that's what they want to do, then let the insurance companies pay for the medicine. I don't understand them. But I love you guys, and I love what you do. I have a friend in from Louisiana who his dad is sick
down there, and he's, you know, been illegally treating with cannabis, of course, but we're trying to change laws everywhere. And this has inspired him, and he wanted to say a little something tonight.
Right on.
His name's Quentin.
Hey, Quentin.
It's off to all you guys, but I'm going to pass the phone to Quentin.
All right. Quentin?
Hello, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the show.
Wonderful, and how about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Above ground, breathing, and currently out of custody.
I like that motto. It sounds like a great one.
So far, so good.
I would like to touch upon something that you said on your show here. Just the first time I've viewed it, but you were talking about the contacting of congressmen and representatives on that level, on the federal level.
Sure.
I just wanted to let you know that a lot of people are proud of California and Colorado for having reform laws, but I take great pride in New Orleans. New Orleans, if you Google it, you'll find a Times-Picayune about 6 or 7 months ago that the city, including the entire city council and the chief of police, completely just decriminalized it. So I would like to encourage people out there that are wishing to have these absurd prohibition laws taken away, that you also consider that here on a local level, no matter what size your town or city is, that you can go to city council meetings. New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and soon my hometown of Lafayette, Louisiana, will be having its first medicinal oil dispensary, and it's because the people on a local level, it had nothing to do with freaking congressmen at all. It has to do with the police working with your city government and the city council, and things can get done on a local level that is going to choke the system down at the bottom and force the top to have to ask for food. It's just another thing for food for thought for this wonderful thing that you're doing, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. And Quentin, just so you know, my message has always been, it's the power of one. Each one of us has the power, the right to make change, whether it's being answering a jury summons and sitting on that jury and saying not guilty because the law is bad, immoral, or unjust, and you have a right to do that without any fear of being punished. The right to make change all around you, with the people that you're around, with your local government, with your local anybody that would have influence on you. You have a right and even an obligation to do everything you can to make those changes. And as much as I know Craig thinks that Congress is the answer, I support that because he supports it. But anybody who knows me for any length of time, it's all grassroots, and every single one of us can, will, and does make a change. And hopefully it's a change for the better.
I completely agree with that. Thank you very much for what you're doing. Now that I'm getting to see it firsthand, I originally had some thoughts of doing something similar back in my college days, but I was scared to be prosecuted for the name of the internet address that I wanted to purchase. But I would like to drop a name
Sure.
for your viewers. There's a very important person. I'm a veteran, and I consider this man I'm about to mention the name of to be the most patriotic of all Americans. His name is Smedley Butler. People could look into this guy. He wrote his book. His first book was War's a Racket. It discusses all of your big pharma stuff, and all of the records are available free online. People can see truth instead of watching illusion and BS on the television set and I call them the 1984 Orwellian charades that we have on the TV today. But I encourage everyone to seek out the truth about exactly what our enemy is. We are trained to learn our enemy. Well, our enemy is Big Pharma. Our enemy is all of these big corporations that have been in power for 100 years or so. And it begins with awakening. And people need to be awakened to books such as War's a Racket, written by the most decorated Marine of World War II and an advocate for veterans of World War I. So there's a great deal of things that can be done. I look forward to getting to know you better. I'm glad to have finally been able to see your show, and I really want to shake your hand one day on a job well done, sir. You
Excellent. I appreciate that, and I hope to earn it. I will look up that book and I will read it probably by the time that that we meet in person. So,
What's the guy's name again?
you want to say the name of the name of the author and the name of the book again, please?
Yeah, the name of the book is War is a Racket, and Smedley Butler wrote it. And if I will have it texted to your webpage if not, but it's
Perfect.
You can find on Google.
Yep.
Smedley Butler, and then you will find The Business Plot and War is a Racket.
I will order it tonight. So I appreciate that, and you know the key is to every. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay, you also might want to, for your viewers in the future, go ahead and look at the Times-Picayune about the article I'm talking about as far as New Orleans, completely just the police, saying we're not arresting people for this anymore. So, a little ammunition to hand you for, like, hey, here's an example of a city that told not only the federal government, where to put it, but they told their state government where to put it. So
I love it.
That the real strength lies at the bottom of the pyramid.
I couldn't agree more.
That's about all I have to say, Joe.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I agree with that, and I've been saying that forever. And again, you're right. The power is in the people. Remember, with public sentiment, anything is possible, and without it, nothing is possible. And we are the public sentiment. We are the ones that make that voice up. And it only takes a small group of people to say, you know what, we're not going to do this, or we are going to do this. And generally speaking, when we get it into even a smallest area of power, a local city, a state's not going to stamp out a local city for doing what they think is right. Generally speaking, they'll be allowed to do what they want without any interference, and especially if you get the law enforcement in support of it. So I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think next week's show we're going to talk about local action, and I'll do some research on other towns, but we'll get into it.
I can probably help you out a little bit with that, and I'll call in next week.
Yeah. Well, let's talk during the week, and I'll get some more information from you, and we'll build a show around it.
That sounds wonderful.
All right, Quentin. Well, I appreciate your time. I'm here trying to be effective. You didn't expect that, did you? All right. All right, Bobby. Well, we're running low on time, so I'm going to have to get moving along. I got Creed, I got George Martirano, and I got Tom Corby to wrap up the show here. So, but let's talk during the week about this next show. Whoops, we got some feedback. All right. Let's see. We got Creed Leffler up, and then we got George Martirano, and then Tom Corby. Creed Leffler, welcome to the show. How are you doing today? I am doing fantastic. Yes.
Hi, Cup of Joe with Joe. I have some good news and I have some bad news. We have 7,135 signatures on the petition I created. Lisa, do you want to give them the bad news I talked to you about a couple days ago regarding YouTube? Sorry I haven't been on the show for a couple weeks. I've been working on some big projects that you will hear about as they happen. Joe, earlier you were talking about bridge builders. There's a poem called The Bridge Builder that I'm thinking might be fitting to read during this show. Can you Google the poem and read it on the show today? Oh, and Joe, can you at some point allow me to be on the actual live feed as a guest? There's a new feature on Facebook Live that allows you to add people to the broadcast. I'm not going to be able to do that tonight, but maybe in a couple weeks. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to just answer those questions here, and then we'll move on because I'm running out of time. I will look up The Bridge Builder and read it on next week's show because I'm almost out of time. Lisa, I don't know where she just went, but I think she'll be back here shortly. and she will give the bad news. Oh, here she is.
I'm right here.
Okay, and then as far as the being a guest on the live feed on Facebook, I believe Lisa can add you to that. She's the one who does the live feed where I do the YouTube. I do the YouTube feed. So, anyways, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. She's going to tell us the bad news, and we'll see what's going on.
What am I telling?
The bad news about YouTube.
Oh, okay. The bad news about YouTube is they once again have taken out Sasha, who is also known as Silenced Hippie. And we don't know why they've taken her YouTube channel down again, but they have. And there are still some other channels that are up. So we need to make sure that we make a lot of noise because we shouldn't have our voices silenced just for doing what we as adults like to do. She is an adult. She is over the age of 18. And it's not right that they've done that. They allow drinking. They allow stupid things. 88,000 people die a year from alcohol. So why not let people heal themselves with a plant? So that's the bad news. And then the good news is Creed's got like a bunch of people on his move.org petition, over 7,000. So, you know, but we just keep, you know, support people on YouTube. Watch Joe's channel on YouTube. That's how you can rewatch these videos right here. They're all archived on our www.thsintl.org website. You can re-see all of our videos. You can call in. And yeah, so the bad news is that they took Sasha off, but the good news is we can make some noise and maybe help her get back on.
All right. There we go. And you know, folks, and Creed, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, but I'm going to continue talking about this a little bit. We're getting some feedback going on. But it would be great to have you come on maybe in 2 weeks. Next week's Thanksgiving, so the week after that, maybe have you come on with the live feed on the Facebook. So we'll try to coordinate that. Again, Creed Leffler, once again, this guy is a hell of an activist and demonstrates every time that we just keep going. He shows up to work and he gets going. Thank you very much, Creed. All right, up next we got George Martirano, and you know, again, George is a dear friend. George has endured things that I can't imagine. We talk about those moments, those epiphany moments, those life-changing events. Imagine 32 years languishing in prison over a plant. I can't imagine what that might do to a human spirit. But for George Martirano, he rose above it, and he continues to rise above it. And he helps people on numerous levels. And no matter what happens, no matter what comes his way, he just smiles and gets to work. And I've never seen a guy as driven and as focused and just moving forward, even though he's kind of all over the place. Sometimes it's towards a goal, and he's working a bunch of different things at once to make it happen. But no matter where he is, no matter when you talk to him, you're going to get something positive from that experience. And I feel blessed that George has graced our show for the last, coming up on a year now. I think it's been a little while, and he always has something that's worthwhile that can help take you through the week. So here we go, George Martirano. Welcome once again. At least you're going to stay awake this time, right?
Yeah, sorry about last week. I had phone right on my chest. I was just laying there waiting to get speaking. I fell asleep. And I was wondering, matter of fact, I got Joe, and I says, easy, wouldn't you guys just hear me snoring? So it's just that I started my days very early. Then for me to speak tonight, it's got to be about 10 at night. And like I started, so I apologize, but I'm still here. But anyway, as many know, many don't know, I'm opening up real soon the Hit House Cafe, first ever in Philly. And matter of fact,
90 seconds.
Designing the well, I have a 200-year-old well that I thought it was important not to just cover up, but expose it. It was covered up for many decades and just stood dormant. But I've been doing my research, and 360-degree turn, and with a lot of time. And the 360-degree turn that well was actually run by bootleggers starting in 1920, and they actually ran it into the early 50s. But it wasn't just about making booze for people's. First, it was booze for all the speakeasies. But even after Prohibition, with the black community, the speakeasies, they had to have some way to get their whiskey. Anyway, my grandparents used to actually utilize the well. They used to go there and buy the pints of liquor and use it to make a lot of things to help in illnesses. If you had a cold, 10 seconds. Dying people, they would take the pure alcohol and make Anazet and make Anazet as a liqueur. And these were put in drinks when you were very ill. And even when we were children, we had colds. There was no doctors, but the grandparents, they made these medicines for cough. If you had a cough, a bad cold problem, and they would make all these little drinks, and they would administer even to a child, to make it better. So anyway, fast forward. Now I'm opening up a CBD shop, and we're helping others. We're not even open, and there isn't a day that goes by that we don't get a bang on the door from someone ill. Matter of fact, I think someone called you today, Joe.
Yes, I did get a call today. Yep, I will be calling her back tomorrow. I got all tied up today, but I will call her back tomorrow.
Yeah, she's very ill. So they're coming to the store with this historical well, but now the store is offering CBDs to help the ill. So it's a parallel. It's a strange parallel, but it seems that location helped people many, many years ago and decades ago. Now, fast forward to today, it's still helping people. So imagine that location is still going to be helping people.
That's exciting.
In fact, we're having a plaque. But I just said it, we're going to call it the bootleggers well. But it was not to make, everyone believes it. Of course they made money. They sold pints of alcohol throughout the neighborhoods. But again, the people that were poor took that alcohol and made medicines. That's what the shops are. I wanted to share that with everyone. That's strange how I took a hole in the floor, 30 feet deep, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be seeing it when I go live. So it's just amazing how it's being used to attract people, but to help them with CBD, especially with illnesses. I want to share that with everybody.
Well, I appreciate that, George, and I can't wait to see it in person. The Hip Hemp Cafe is going to be coming live from.
We actually Googled it, and there's no establishment in all of America that has 200-year-old privy well right on the location.
Wow.
So, again, I made a little bit of my personal history again.
I love it. Well, you are truly a pioneer, my friend.
All right, you'll be seeing it soon, Joe.
I'm looking forward to it.
You're going to be coming east to spend some time with me.
You bet I am. You bet I am. All right, George. Well, George Martorano, folks, he's about to getting ready to open up the Hip Hemp Cafe, and we're going to be doing a show live from there before too long. All right, we got Scott and Nikki. Sorry, I cut you off. Hold on. Let me bring you back. I feel bad here. Whoops. Hold on. All right, George. Sorry. Lost him. Okay. All right. Well, I screwed that one up. All right, we got Scott and Nikki. Now, Scott and Nikki are we're overtime now, so you're not going to be able to call in, but we got Scott and Nikki and then Tom Corby to wrap it up. So Scott and Nikki are running the newest chapter of the Human Solution International, and their chapter is called the Rock and Fire chapter of Central California, and they're just getting started. We just got our chapter charter certificates for them they'll be getting, and we got a new banner that just got done. And in fact, it's going out in the mail tomorrow. So welcome to the show, you guys. It's exciting to have our newest chapter coming aboard.
Thanks. We're really excited. We're really excited to be aboard.
Hey, Joe.
Hey. So what's going on up in Central Cali? You guys are away from the fires a little bit.
Yeah, we're away from the fires. Thank God. Boy, there's a lot of people. There's so many people's lives are being destroyed by that. That's terrible. But we want to help with this Craig Cecil man. We need to help this man.
Yes, we do. Well,
yeah, we do. I mean, it really. When I heard him talking and heard that he spends all his time in prison, I mean, it's just like something just came over me. Like, dude, what? I mean, I almost can't comprehend that.
Well, and that's that moment that I keep talking about. And sometimes it takes the suffering of somebody else, and sometimes it takes your own suffering. But when we get that moment of, wait a minute, what the hell? How can somebody be locked up in prison for life for something that we all take for granted? Whether it's legal or illegal, none of us thinks anything about using it, doing it, growing it, making oil with it, whatever it is that we're doing. Nobody really thinks about it like, oh my God, I might get locked up in prison for life. Nobody has that thought. And yet Craig Cecil is serving life in prison today.
Yeah, I just can't get my head over that. That's just...
Well, we're here in Central California. We're rocking fire. We're ready to
try to help you out with that 18.
Yeah, be on that 18.
Well, that's what's going on. We're starting to build it one step at a time. So we got your banner just came in, so it's heading your way, and we'll be putting together your chapter package with your charter. We just got the charter document in, and so you'll be getting a whole bunch of literature, and we'll be ready to launch you officially.
All right. We're excited.
And we want to talk to you about what we can do for this guy who's been in prison for that long.
Well, I'm thinking it's time that we make another. We've done a number of projects for Craig, and it's time to do another one. So let's get to the important part. If somebody's in Central California, anywhere from Bakersfield up to Sacramento, how do they reach you if they want to participate, if they want to help out in ending prohibition?
Just give us a call at 559-356-0358 or email adiamondcutie, it's adiamondqty@gmail.com, and just reach out and we'll do what we can to help.
Excellent. And we're in the process of updating the website to include all of the new chapters and their contact information. So in the near future, you'll be able to reach all of the chapters by going to thsintl.org and find a chapter, and there will be a way to connect that way as well. So, all right, you guys. Well, let's talk tomorrow personally, and I'm ready to make a plan. Let's engage this thing. Think about what.
Let's do it, Joe. We're on board with you.
All right, beautiful.
We're ready to fire up Central California.
All right, let's do it. Central Cali. All right, you guys. I hear you.
Better up.
All right. Well, tomorrow we'll talk, and then we'll begin to launch a plan. I can assure you that.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, folks. We're a few minutes long, and now we got Tom Corby to wrap up the show. Tom Corby is a lion of a man. He's coming out of a funk, and I think hopefully he recognizes how important he is to this organization and how important it is that we all stand together and hold each other up, whether we're having good times or bad times. We're not done till we're done, and when we're done, we'll celebrate. You'll know it. I will tell you. Tom Corby, welcome to the show.
Well, I thank you, Joe, and Coffee Party Radio Show. those on the front lines, they always coming together to end prohibition. I also want to thank all the support and love sent. I'm doing better with my back. It's healing. I think right now, like many, I'm having more of a problem with depression, anxiety, with the fires up here in Northern California. Now we're burning up. My heart saddened the other day, the loss of icon, Gordy died. He's been a friend for years.
Yeah, I know Gordy. Our hat goes off to Gordy. He was a good man.
Yes, he sure was. Had a kind soul. When we talk about court supporters and advocates, he came for many. He also was a legal strategist, won his own cases. He also helped other people with their cases. Like thank you, Dan, right here.
Hey, Frank.
And also, how's it going, Joe?
Doing good, doing good. You're doing a good job.
Well, thank you, sir. Oh, yeah, and him and Nick Morantz here. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, Nick, how's it going?
And man, of course, they knew why, because Gordy Dice was there for their gate and they for their court support. I wish we had more like him. And we're going to miss him so much. Gordy Dice. He was 58 years old. 40 times. And I can't say it enough. I actually get some tears. I forget to breathe. Oh, I think he'll dead. And like Frank said, I don't forget to breathe. R.I.P. Gordy.
R.I.P. Gordy. Yeah, for anybody who never met Gordy, he was a free-thinking man. He was a guy who stood up to the government. I met Gordy in court, I think, when we were either it was for Tom or for Daisy or one of the times I went up there. But Gordy was a man who just was fearless. He had no problem walking into the fire. He was always the man who would be the first to help out. Just another lion of a man, and to have a man really cut down so young. I mean, 58 years old. That's geez, I can't even imagine. That's young these days. Better be young. I'm getting there myself. But the end of the day is Gordy was a man that if we had more men like him, we would not have prohibition. So hopefully we can raise up 3 in his place, and that's what we need to do. So, all right, folks.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
You're Joe,
I'm
there?
still here.
Yeah, well, the good news is that his 20-year-old daughter and his ex-wife got out and they're safe.
Oh, good.
So Gordy would be that would make Gordy very happy. That's the man who was going to miss him so much. Thank you, Joe, and all the day.
All right, Tom. Well, thanks for calling in, and it's good to have you back in service here. And as you can see, we need you. So we need to raise up the next generation and get them taught and get them motivated. And that's the next step. It's on our shoulders. We got a good place for them to stand, but we got to bring them over. So appreciate everything, Tom, and we'll talk during the week. All right, folks. Here we are, a few minutes late. Once again, a great show. I appreciate everybody who called in and participated. I appreciate everybody who's been joining the live feeds, YouTube, Facebook, every which way we can. We're getting this information to you. This is important work. We're not doing this because we're sponsored. Nobody's getting paid to do this. We're doing this because it's important. We're doing this because we're making history. We're doing this because it needs to be done.
Lives are at stake.
So come join the A-Team, be part of this, and we'll see you next week.
I am Willie Nelson, and the Willie Nelson Teapot Party and I endorse the human solution, supporting cannabis prisoners because no one should go to jail for a plant.
The things I should have said and done, you were always on my mind. You were always on my mind.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Whew, that was good.